So with that, I see the chat function is working. This is great. We see a lot of chats already coming in. Fantastic. With that, Ulrich, I would hand over to you. I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A session, and I'll just toss the points to you.
Okay, thank you very much, James, for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody. I'm happy that we are having such a full room today. And today we're talking about data integrity in manufacturing, as James told you. And I would like to start with a little poll, because before we go into the topic, I would like to ask you, what do you think is special, so in quote special, about manufacturing data? So please feel free to fill out this poll and put in a little text, or to skip it as you want. Good. This is our agenda for today. We will come back to the poll in a minute. This is our agenda for today. I will give you a very brief introduction, not bother you too long with data integrity background. Then we will talk about special things in manufacturing data. We will have a look at some best practices. I will follow two interesting guidelines. And then I will give you some case studies from recent FDA regulatory actions, 483s and warning letters. And of course, we throw the view into the future. We have a Q&A session, but as James mentioned, we are flexible to hand in questions in between the different chapters. Good. I'm seeing there are already going a lot of specialties in, so that looks really good. Let's go into the introduction. So as you probably all know, data and data integrity is one of the backbones of our industry, because a customer, which is a patient, which could be a very sick patient in our case, does usually not see or smell or feel whether a medication is okay or whether it could give him additional harm. And therefore, he has to rely on the agencies which ensure that everything is working with adequate quality. And of course, this can only work on behalf of data. So data really carries all our evidence, all our trust into the public health, into the public, and into the patients. And of course, it's also a regulatory requirement to fulfill the data integrity requirements. Here I stay with the FDA definition from the Q&A guideline 2018, which says that data integrity means that we have complete, consistent, and accurate data, which fulfills the ALCOA principle: attributable, legible, contemporaneously recorded, original or true copy, and accurate. As you might know, there are several plus and now even one plus definition for ALCOA, but we will stay with that for now. One main point I want to highlight is that data integrity is always a very multidimensional field. So we got the so-called hard facts, like processes, systems, and procedures. We call them hard because we are relatively easy changeable. We can buy new systems, change the process. And the so-called soft facts, which is people's mindset and quality culture. And they are often very difficult to change, but they play a very important role so that this temple of data integrity stays stable. The second core concept I want to give you on the way for our talk is the lifecycle concept. So data is not a one-time done task, but a lifecycle task. And here you can see a definition of the data lifecycle from creation, processing, let it be a measurement in the lab. And then we got review, reporting, and use. That might be the batch release decision. This can be relatively short term, just a matter of days, whereas we then go into a long time of data retention until we get finally to the destruction. And electronic data always resides on systems, so we also have to consider the system lifecycle. So this is the GAM5 lifecycle, where we have the V model. However, the important thing is that we should consider all the data requirements, including also retention, already in the design phase. So it would be advisable to already know how I export or how I retain my data, not just when I go into the retirement phase. And this is named as data integrity by design. So always thinking from the design phase. So these two life cycles are very common and also commonly used in the guidelines. And more, we also take into consideration that we got a product life cycle, which has also relations to the data. So we got the R&D phase, including the preclinical phase. Then we go into clinical trials in the different phases of the clinical trials with the scale-ups in between, going into the commercial phase. And we can learn throughout this complete product life cycle about our product. So also here it's advisable to use the data in order to provide knowledge about our product. And the third and last key concept I want to bring in this introduction is the concept of critical thinking. As you might have realized, critical thinking has gotten quite a buzzword, last but not least because of the CSA guideline from FDA last year. But it has been there previously from the PICS guideline on data integrity and data management, which was published 2021. And it says that it should also be used by inspectors. So that means an inspector should not go to the very last unimportant system and inspect this, but they should also go to those processes and systems which really have an important role in focus of patient safety. The guideline says even more in this section. It says that an indicator of data governance maturity is an organizational understanding and acceptance of residual risks, and to prioritize action. I think that's really important if we consider implementing a data integrity program, for example, in a manufacturing site. Vice versa, if a company thinks or documents that there's no risk of data failure, then it's very unlikely that the company has made an adequate assessment of its situation. And so this is a sign for non-applicability of critical thinking in an organization. To sum it up, critical thinking means there's no one-size-fits-it-all solution. We should always go with analytical, logical solutions. Also, the thought is important to consider whether there is a 100% compliant solution in place. I've never seen 100% compliance at once, but we can prioritize and get better stage by stage, getting better by prioritizing the important processes. For example, in manufacturing, those which affect the patient safety. This brings us to the second chapter. What is really special about manufacturing data? Maybe James, you can weigh in a bit on that, also considering our great responses which came in.
Thank you, Ulrich. What I'll do is I'll just close out this poll, and I think we can go ahead and look at some of the results that are here. And it looks great. I mean, we have points that came in the area of what is special about manufacturing data. Starting from, it has many variables. The quality integrity is there. Security of manufacturing data is very important. We can see things that there are many different data types. It has an impact on the product, which in the end has an impact on the patient. Obviously, we have the criticality and the integrity and the Alcoa principles in here as well. And there's one interesting point here. The data can tell us a lot about our process. I think that's a really key word right there. Looking at process maturity, looking at process controls, and linking it back to data. Right, using data as an asset rather than just creating bits and bytes. I think that's a key element. And our audience here, I just had another look at this. So we're up to 70 people now. This is great around the world. This is really fantastic. We have everyone around the world in here weighing in on this poll. So as we can see, there are a lot of things where we look at the data types, where we look at the quality, where we understand the product. And that the really special piece I can say from my experience is the special piece about manufacturing data is it's really where we're going to influence that product that's going to go out the door, right? Hopefully we can keep it consistent and we can keep the quality as high as we're expecting. But also when we look at some adverse influences, they're also happening exactly at that level in the manufacturing stages. So back to you, Ulrich.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very, very important and good thought. So we are directly at the source of quality. So if we speak about quality by design, here is where the influence starts. And vice versa, if we look at the lab data, it's rather the response on it. That's a very, very good, interesting thought on that. So I cannot really say it better than our audience did with the poll. So one aspect is the diversity of systems. I think that's the biggest one. Also, in my opinion, you got so many different systems. They might be in a different implementation state even because sometimes manufacturing sites have grown historically. So one system was added to the other one. And as you know, if we speak about operational technology, which is also manufacturing technology, it also has very long life cycle runs. We'll come to that in a minute. This is also a very, very special topic. We got long-running systems, maybe the danger of outdated operational systems, and so on. So what we have here also is we got the connection to the physical process, huge amount of data. Hysteresis might play a role, so the sensors could also affect their environment. So it could be that already pre-processed data needs to be considered as raw data. Synchronicity is a very important point. We also had this in this poll. Time synchronicity, like governed by an NTP server, but also access control synchronicity could be an important point, so that we have a domain controller which uses LDAP or Active Directory to bring everybody the same account credentials, because that also helps to get it more usable, our concepts. Other points we had is this multidisciplinarity in every dimension. That's also why I honestly mostly like manufacturing projects, because you get so many different systems, many interfaces. The data is used for different purposes, not only product quality, what we are focusing here on, but also maintenance and yield. Of course, you can also increase yield by looking at the data and drawing the right conclusions, and also monitoring of devices. So it's with this amount of data and this different purposes, it's very important to have a clear definition. What is our GMP data, and which data are we talking about? Segregation of duties can be complex. You got many parties involved in a manufacturing site, and these groups are very interdisciplinary. So this also includes suppliers, which can also be a challenge, especially if you go to special machines, which are very specific, for example, for a biotechnological process. Then the selection of suppliers is very predefined. You don't have a huge choice. And the supplier might be expert in engineering or in, let's say, biology or chemistry, but maybe not in data management, data flow design, and data integrity. So it could be necessary, more than in the lab, in my experience, that you have to have a really good user requirement specification, so that you can buy the right system, which saves you a lot of work later, and to have a good, strong third-party management program. And this point, I think, was well stated out. We cross domains, different interfaces, and different stages of implementation. So thank you. That was a very good answer, and I think we put in the most relevant points here. Now we're going into the, let's say, theoretical chapter, where I want to highlight two of the major guidelines on data integrity in manufacturing, and pick out some points for you today, so that you can see how these guidelines see it, or how it works. The first one is the GAMP.
I just started another poll just in case it's going to pop up on your screen here. We're talking about a lot of equipment here on the shop floor. We're talking about a lot of different devices, a lot of different manufacturing pieces. As you said, there's a huge diversity when we look at shop floor. I put a poll in here, in your view, which is the most critical equipment on the shop floor? Now, that could be anything that you're doing, but when we look at data integrity and we see the data that's actually being collected, which one is it for you? There's not a right answer. We just want to kind of get your input on that. And I opened up that poll as well, so it should pop up on your screen. All right, where's the data coming from? What's your main elements that are out there? So we'll just have that going in the side. Ulrich, back to you, and then I'll kind of give the feedback of what the audience has said.
Yeah, and I will have a proposal later, because we have one example in the section. Let's see whether this is a part of it. So this is the ISPE manufacturing records good practice guide. This is really good, and there is a huge picture. I don't want to go in every detail now, because it's too big for this short webinar session. However, you can see that you got a automation hierarchy. So we got the physical process level here, which is actually the manufacturing. For example, here we have the steam autoclave where we have the temperature and so on. This get measured and steered by the level 1. And then we got the level 2, which is the process level, the SCADA systems, which are controlling the processes. And then we got the what I mentioned before, IT/OT conversion. So below here, we usually talk to automation engineers, and up here we often talk to IT people. So this is no longer a gap. I think it improved well in the last years, but this is a challenge to bring together the long-running, long-working OT world with a more volatile, more changing, patching, updating IT world. And here in level 3, you would have the MES, which, for example, gets a master recipe and creates from this master recipe your control recipe for a specific batch. And in the ideal scenario, this MES directly goes in conversation with your SCADA systems and tells them what to do, so that you directly feed it into the control model. In some instances, you might also have human interaction here, which makes it, of course, a bit more risky and more difficult and burdensome to act. And then you really control your devices, actuators like moving motors, moving parts around. Then you got the sensors, which in our example of the autoclave, let's say the actuator closes the door and opens the valves so that the pressure can come in. And then we got the sensors which measure the, in this case, critical process parameters, pressure, temperature, and time. And this then gets stored into let it be a database in our process model, from where it then goes to the electronic production record. From there, we can then build the well-known batch records, which might be a PDF electronically signed, or which could also be paper, depending on the state of the site. And this model gives you one good opportunity to build up a data flow map. So this is now very very generic. But if you make it more specific and you can use this hierarchy, you can also use something like a SIPOC diagram with input and output on the left side, output on the other side, and then you can draw your data flow map. With that, you have a lot of clarity how your data process looks like, and you can also derive the risks adequately from that and implement the right controls. How do you implement a data integrity program in manufacturing? There I can recommend the technical report from PDA, TR84, which is on data integrity in manufacturing. And the implementation is that you, of course, first have to identify which processes are relevant, where do you need an assessment. One great tool we made good experience recently is a Gemba walk. In Gemba walks, you can talk to your shop floor so that you can have the connection between the shop floor and the QA or the management, and you do your data process flow mapping as shown before. Then you can determine the data criticality and the existing controls, considering data management, human factors, and the GMP processes. And you put it together into a vulnerability map. I will show that in a minute. First factor for that is the data criticality.
Sorry, if we could just go back one slide. I'll close out the poll right here, but I think there's a lot of good information that came in. So the question I put into the poll was, what's the most critical equipment on the shop floor? And it's correct in many places. It's not just a machine. It's not just one piece of equipment. Also, we've gotten points in here, like for instance, on an equipment side, the MES system or an HPLC system or a computerized system or the filling machine. But there's also a lot of feedback here about the staff, the employers, the employees, the personnel that is involved, although they're not considered as equipment. Resources, yes, but maybe not equipment, right? But if you look into this data integrity risk management model, which fits within there. So each piece that you have and all the answers you've put in are great because it fits into this, right? If you're looking at a balance, or if you're looking at, I'll put in here the machine where the actual projects gets packed, or the filling machines, or the different areas that are out there, they all fit into the vulnerability environment. And when you look at the bottom, what Ulrich was just talking about, you have your data management processes, you have your human factors, and of course you have your GMP processes as well. So you really have a lot of things coming together. It's not only one piece of equipment or one system or one area. It's a holistic view, and we also got that answer in there as well. So we got a lot of great feedback. One of them was you have to look at the entire system end to end. And this is back to you, Ulrich. This is really what we're showing here with this PDA picture as well.
Yeah, that's nice answers, and that's very true. So end-to-end data flow maps should guide you through the complete process. So let's have a look at the vulnerability box. I will jump here a bit because I wanted to bring in this grid. I think it's very logical. It's not so complicated, but you got two dimensions. The one is the data criticality. So how critical is your sub-process? Let it be the filling process with a filling machine, which is of course a quite critical process, because if we get in some contamination, a patient could die in the end. So we got for sure data criticality level high. And now it depends on how well controlled it is. So we got different scenarios here. Everything is validated and automated, and everything, yeah, very secure. Then we got a high control level. Let's look at the opposite. Everything is manually done. Data is transcribed manually. Then of course the data control level is low, and then we are in the red part. And then you can drive different risk classes. Here we got blue. So in the blue area, you have negligible data vulnerability. You don't have to do anything. The same is in the green, it's acceptable. In orange and red, you would, of course, work on the residual risks to mitigate and remediate them. Of course, by nature, you rather can only go in this left direction here to mitigate risk, because you probably cannot scale down the data criticality levels because they occur from the process you're running. So you will always aim to go here left and reduce risk by increasing the controls, and this could be procedural controls, but also technical controls, as we will see in a moment. One example I want to grab out of this guidance, because it's very helpful, is the answer, or one possible answer on the frequently asked question: how often should we review our audit trails? And here the guideline gives a risk-based and documented way how to define it. They make up here 3 scores, which is the detectability score, which tells us, is the data already reviewed? So if it's already reviewed, our factor is 0, and then of course the product will be 0. So we don't have to do anything. We got the severity score. So how critical is the data? As mentioned before, this critical process parameters will fall under 10. So if we stay with our filling line, it will be 10. And then the question whether data can be deleted or altered by a user. So let the super user here be the user, that's the definition here, or whether it's only possible with an admin, or whether it cannot be deleted or altered at all by any user. Let's say first in this very simple case, nobody can change the data or harm it. Then we, of course, come only at a maximum out of a factor of 10, which makes then, next logical step, the review to be only event-based. So you do not need a regular review for these data items. And then you got other scores. I don't want to go into any detail here, but I want to give you the feeling how it works. For example, 11 to 20, the guideline says twice per year, 40 score weekly. And this is a very interesting case, the 100 score. And I want to scope this with one example, which is also directly from this great technical report. Let it be a filter integrity test machine, which is in every sterile filling line available. Probably some of you also choose this one as one of the important ones. It's a favorite of inspectors, of course, because A, the process is easily understandable, and B, they are everywhere the same. There's a handful of suppliers where you find them, and so inspectors can relate well to them. And now we got the first element, which is the batch run data element. That means, let's say you have a negative result, so filter integrity test failed, and it gets not reported, which is often called testing into compliance. This is meant here, so repeated or aborted test. It will not be detected elsewise if you have a batch record afterwards where you copy the data or print it to. It is severe because the filter test is very important and everybody could do it. So this brings us out with a score of 100, which means, following the definition before, that the guideline recommends a batch-wise auditory review for this pattern. Vice versa, classical scenario in manufacturing, you have some batch setup data, could be recipes, could be methods. They should be only changeable for a small group of users so that the probability score is lower. And so that you then come out with a review frequency here, for example, twice per year. So I think this is a very interesting case study on auditory reviews. The guideline contains different ones, also on access control and backup and restore, and you can really get some idea about this through that guideline.
Rich, I'll just jump in here with you as well. So I just put it in the chat. There is a Q&A section. Feel free to use it to add in any questions that you have. Typically, at this point, we do get a question when we speak with our clients, and they kind of say, "Well, why would I even want to do this scoring mechanism? What's really in it for me? I know what I'm doing. I have my audit trail review in place. Why is it so important to put a scoring system in there and walk through this?" The answer is fairly simple. If you look at today's equipment that's out there, so if you look at a typical shop floor, you're going to find equipment that may be very old, probably older than myself, and that means it's really, really old. Or there might be equipment which is fairly new, which has fully automated features in there. When we look at some of the newest equipment that's out there, there's not one audit trail. There could be 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 audit trails that are out there. And what PDA did in their technical report is they really put a lot of emphasis on getting to know what's critical for your data. Which ones of those elements are affecting the product quality or the patient safety that are there. Maybe you don't have to review all of them every day in every detail. Maybe there's only specific ones that you want to look into. So what we do when we work with our clients is we always take this PDA guide and we always go through it to make sure that we can have a systematic scoring to really say, where are we going to focus energy on? Where are you going to focus your resources on and your budgeting on? Because no one has unlimited budgets. We all saw what happened to Swiss banks, right? So Ulrich, back to you. I think let's go look at the next piece.
Yeah, thank you. And that goes back to critical thinking. Be aware that this is a guideline, a industry guideline. You don't have to follow it word by word, but I think the basic idea, that's exactly what it gives you. It gives you an objective way to rate this. We talked about human factors, and I also don't want to leave them out of this talk. However, we will later have a poll which talks you would be most interested. And I think talking about quality culture and human factors on data integrity is a talk of its own. It's only fair to go into detail there. So today I only have a very short outtake also of the manufacturing DI guideline. Human errors come from two main parts. One is unintentional, the other one is intentional. In my experience, the unintentional part is much, much higher than the intentional act. And there are different causes of error, and it makes it's worth it to think about it. So the one is procedure gaps. That's what we see very often. So let be the procedures, the SOPs are not well written, are unlogical, or miss important steps. Then errors are caused. They are done by the human, but the root cause is not the human. Similarly, you have knowledge gaps. So it's unclear how to perform a task, although it's written down. So adequate training is missing. Training always plays a huge role. If I consider a data integrity program to be successful, I need training and awareness campaign in order to go directly to the human factor also. And then we got the action errors, as PDA calls them. Attention failure is error caused by taking a wrong action, for example, in an unfocused state. Could be that we don't have enough resources on the shop floor so that the person's just overwhelmed with tasks. or also memory failure when the person doesn't remember in the situation what to do. This can be dangerous if the task is too burdensome, too repeating. Then human nature, tends to fail because it works anyway. So why do I need to watch that? And on the other side, we got the intentional acts. On the one hand, fraud, malicious intent, really to avoid personal pain and get personal gain. And this is the one where the quality culture then comes in, because here you need to have an intact quality culture. You need to live the values. You need to be a model for the values in order to avoid as much as possible this fraud case. Be aware that you're working together with humans. So the human factor will always be there. So there will also always be there the opportunity or the possibility that fraud occurs. So also make your staff aware of the impact. It's in the end about the patient safety. And this should also be lived by senior management. It's always senior management who is responsible for the quality culture. And of course, misconduct could happen, will happen, and there you need to have the right controls in place so that you find it out as early as possible, not when the product is in the market, but earlier. May it be through an auditory review, or may it be through controls that it's not possible to change something. With that being said, we are now going into some case studies. So I brought to you 3 major case studies for today. From the manufacturing side. And the one is a very familiar case. We are here talking about outdated equipment. Here it was a filling machine. It was a 483 published last August. And here we got the observation that we do not have appropriate controls over computers or related systems. So what happened here is we got a filling machine which has no personalized accounts and no audit trail in place. So we should not have this in our manufacturing line anymore. But what is also interesting about this finding, I think it's clear that FDA cites this, but what is interesting also about this finding is that we can see what could have been possible mitigation actions within this finding. So for example, data were not able to be printed or transferred. Controls have not been established that no changes to parameters in the approved recipe occur. So for example, with a data review, you could have avoided this part. So you could have had a data review on the data which gives you the critical process parameters, as well as critical machine parameters, which are not checked elsewise. Having not an audit trail in the filling machine is no longer an option. These actions which are named here would rather be mitigations until the remediation is done and the new update or the new machine is in place. And we had recently a concept paper on the Annex 11 revision. So as you might know, the Annex 11 revision is ongoing, Annex 11 of European GMP on computerized systems. And here we have a clause which makes really clear that holding and transferring electronic data in such systems without auditory functionality is not acceptable. I like the sentence, any grace period within this area has long expired. So as you know, Annex 11 is from 2011, the current version. We will also talk in the future chapter about it shortly. Part 11 from FDA is from 1997. So it's not so new, I can say, and therefore the grace period is over. Case 2 goes a step further. I have to apologize for the image quality, but it's only available as this kind of scan. And here we have the scenario a bit different. It seems that the production unit has audit trails in place and even has an audit trail review SOP in place. However, it's not followed. So in this case, we can see that the time was ticking, obviously, before the audit. So we can read here approximately 1 week prior to the start of the inspection, your firm discovered that this procedure has not been followed. So it's very close to the inspection that this has been discovered. Probably it hasn't been taken care of before, which throws a bad light on the quality culture, of course, and on the training So you can decide here in this observation, what's the worst thing? Is it the training? Is it the non-following of procedures, or is it the quality culture? So now in this story, time was ticking and ticking. At least for 2 systems, audit trails were reviewed historically, at least something. But of course, you can imagine in a manufacturing site, you've got hundreds of systems. So in short term, the company quickly identified all equipment to be reviewed 1 week prior to the start of the current inspection. So they try to do what they can. But then, of course, FDA did the review on their own. So the review of batch report event logs showed that there are too numerous to list duplicated events, operations, unnamed batch operations. So you find a lot then if you do not search in the audit trail before. And what is interesting also here is that this could have good reasons. So it could be that you do not have a relation of a batch run to a real batch because you're doing maintenance or because you're doing troubleshooting. However, then you need to have it traceable. Then you need to have it reported in the quality management system. And of course, the audit trail is the place to go to have it traceable, to really have your reason why you're doing something. In most cases, you can add a reason for your action in the computer system, and then you would have get rid of this burdensome finding because you would have been able to trace it. So this is a very interesting case. Having an audit trail alone is of course not enough. You need to review it. And as you can see, audit trail is very persistent still in the FDA findings. The second part we often see is access control and segregation of duties, which you can often find in warning letters and 483s. Just as a side note, the number of 483s in the manufacturing area increased. So FDA is traditionally more focused in the inspections on the lab. So we see a lot of lab findings considering data integrity, but it gets also more and more in the manufacturing area. It's talked about tablet presses and, for example, filling machines. So no audit trail review means no trust into the reported data in the end. And the last case study I want to briefly bring here in is the one about process control. And this is rather new that we see the citations. I think it started in 2020 with a warning letter that we have the requirement explicitly stated that we should have ongoing monitoring of both intra-batch and inter-batch variation. So I think I had a brief issue. James, all good? Can you hear me well?
We can hear you fine and dandy.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will jump in
problem.
right here with this point.
Yeah.
Thank you for that first breather right there. So we're showing a couple warning letters and 483s here, and there's 2 main reasons why we do this in these type of webinars. I'll tell you what it isn't. It's not about fear, uncertainty, or distraction, right? That's what you'll typically see everywhere. Oh no, someone got a warning letter. Let's jump on it. No. These are great insights. This is actually things that we enjoy to read and we enjoy to go through, especially Ulrich. Yeah, that's one of the things that he spends a lot of time with, reading those, understanding those. Why? Because one, it helps to get with the regulatory thinking. If you want to know how the regulatory bodies are currently thinking, what they're focusing on, what they're aiming on, and also what their responses are to industry, start reading warning letters, start reading 483s. There's a lot of great details in it. There's a lot of interesting pieces in the subnotes. So that's one piece that really helps. And the second piece is it always helps us to keep seeing what's happening on the industry. So it's great that we have a chance to work within the industry, but it's also very interesting for us to kind of see it's not only one piece, but what are the trends, where are we going to, and what's happening. Back to you, Ulrich.
Yeah, and I like this this description in particular. You see the in response to this letter provide the following. This section after the warning letter is always the one where the FDA can directly speak to the industry, because here they really describe what to do, and this section got more detailed in the last years. So there are really sometimes very practical proposals what to do. what to follow, not only for the cited company, but it's also meant for the industry because it's much faster than publishing a guideline for FDA to respond to a warning letter with this in response to this section. And it's part of the CGMP documentation we should know. Coming back to why I emphasize this point is because this brings us directly into the future. Now we really want to know intra and inter-batch variation. That means we really want to know how my product develops, how my process develops. That's what I meant before with a product lifecycle. So manufacturing is also not a one-time task. We still can learn, we still can improve our processes. We can learn more about our critical process parameters, and maybe we have to adjust our corridors if we learn more. So this is the point where we go to the future, and this is very much in relation to the last year published ICH revision 1, ICH Q9. Q9 is the quality risk management. It's maybe you can call it the holy grail of GMP, of CGMP, is quality risk management, because you decide everything more or less risk-based. So this is a very important guideline. And we had some emphasis in this guideline on data. So decisions based on data is one of the main increased components of the revision 1. And there's a very nice nice citation on the companion to this guide from ICH. While subjectivity cannot be completely eliminated from QRM activities, it may be controlled by addressing bias. So bias is always the enemy number one for a objective risk decision, as you can imagine. So I always want to reduce bias. And this can be done by maximizing the use of relevant data. And therefore, we can see the so-called pyramid of wisdom, or pyramid of insights in this case. From data, we can really gather via information knowledge. So we can really learn something about our product. We can learn something about our manufacturing process. We can also learn something about our laboratory. And that gathers understanding and brings us to the right decisions. What is the good news here is that quality and business are here on the same page, because leveraging data does not only bring better quality decisions, but also brings better business decisions. So it could well be that at the same time I improve my batch performance, that I improve my yield, or that, of course, I have less batches to be rejected, which is a cost saver, a huge cost saver in the end, if I'm producing a very expensive medication. One example how you could do it is here a scheme. You can call this quality intelligence, which makes your quality operation more intelligent. Is that you have your data part. So you got different sources of data and you put them into a single data repository. As mentioned before, it would be best, or it is absolutely best, if you have both input data like manufacturing data and output data or response data from the lab or in-process controls in one repository, because then you can draw conclusions. You can put them against each other and you can process the data statistically and visualize the data. There are now really simple to use tools for this data visualization. And I think that every quality professional needs to have a basic understanding of data, not data science, but data handling. So for example, Power BI is one of these tools which makes it really relatively easy to visualize context in data. And with that, you can then gather understanding. In the end here, we have, again, a human who makes decisions depending on the data. I gave a webinar on Redica. You can search for this if you want to do so, which elaborates a lot on this topic. And we will also have a dedicated workshop on this topic in June to have some advertisement also in our webinar, which will be in Boston, where we'll go in deep detail on this topic together with Peter Baker, and we will have many hands-on exercises also how to do it, how to really do it with real data.
And Ulrich, I'm putting all these links into the chat. So we had mentioned a blog earlier about Annex 11. You talked about the concept paper. I dropped that one into chat. This one from Redica, and of course this workshop for quality intelligence. I'll be putting these points into the chat as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm I'm giving you some work. And yeah, as you mentioned, this is about the Annex 11 revision. I put it in the audit trail section already a bit. You should be aware that there is an update. Be also aware that the timelines are not so dense in this kind of updates, regulatory updates. I think it's end of 2025 where they aim to have it finalized and getting then in this final version published. Now we only have a concept paper, but this is already quite good to get an understanding in which direction it will go. One part of the concept paper is that cloud will play a bigger role. It's not a surprise. It's very close to our daily experience. So we're working a lot with cloud systems, also with the question how to regulate the cloud providers as contract giver, so to say, as sponsor or as manufacturing unit. How to really monitor them, how to audit them. So there will be more emphasis on it in the Annex 11 revision. And the second point, which is also very logical, is there is an urgent need for guidance on AI and ML algorithms. In particular, when we talk about self-learning algorithms. Here we are at this moment, we are on an edge on this. So also these algorithms get more and more usable. If we think about text data, be aware that we got this new great NLP models, also GPT, which uses these technologies, which can be exploited and used to really get new insights, new information. And that's why also the FDA saw the need to publish a discussion paper on artificial intelligence in drug manufacturing. So this is very close to our topic today. So FDA calls this advanced manufacturing in a sense that you use new technology, that you use AI, ML, or also other technologies to improve your manufacturing process. FDA made a nice Q&A section on this discussion paper. It's a discussion paper, not yet a guiding paper. What will be influenced? Process design and scale up for sure. So we will again learn from the scale up processes for the commercial phase. We will have advanced process controls so we can detect much earlier if something goes wrong with our batch and prevent loss of the batch, but also increase the quality. I think that plays a particular big role for biotechnological processes, which are not so much predictable as classical chemistry. The same goes into process monitoring, but also fault detection. So we know that from many other industries, like airplanes, for example, that they predict maintenance. When should I maintain my device, my plane, or in this case, my filling machine, maybe, and trend monitoring, so that we get an understanding from maybe unseen, unknown influences. Let it be the API producer changes, and then some other parameters change. And I see that in the response by having more impurities, for example. So I think that's really huge opportunities. And they ask several questions. Which kind of applications do you envision to be used in manufacturing? And what do we need as guidance for validation? So I think that's a very, very good question. And I'm happy to be in a commenting committee also from PDA. I'm working on commenting this guideline. And yeah, we will publish this comment on behalf of PDA on this AI drug manufacturing paper from FDA, which will be very, very interesting. If you follow my LinkedIn profile, for example, you will find that, or if you go to our webpage. Yeah, that's it for the topics today, for the new stuff, for the overview theoretically. Let's have a Q&A session on that. I would like to start with one. I got some questions in advance already, frequently asked questions also. And this one, maybe James, you want to start weighing in on that. In your opinion, what are some of the key fundamental mistakes companies have made in their approach to data integrity?
So looking at data integrity, Well, one of the interesting topics that we can see is it's not new. So those of you who are joining our webinar for the first time, this might be a lot of great insights. We hope it is. And for those of you who are joining the topic and have worked with us for years, I recognize a lot of names in the chat today and a lot of names in the attendees. It's not like a new breaking story. So there's been a lot of experiences happened on the market and on the environment. But when we look at some of the key fundamental mistakes that are done, one of the biggest things is trying to do too much too fast without looking at the whole process. So a lot of times we see a typical hurry up and wait approach, right? Oh, we need to do this. We need to do this. Board member said we have to do this. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, what are we going to do? I don't know. How much budget do we have? I don't know. When are we going to be done? We don't know. That's really hard, right? So when you're going to do a data integrity project and you're going to start with it, it's important to always start with the end in mind, right? What do we want to do? Do we want to get a listing of systems? Do we want to build huge Excel sheets? What are we really trying to do? A lot of times when we start off with clients just on their journey in data integrity, we always help them to kind of see what is the next horizon. Where are you going to in a digital manufacturing plant or things like that? So that's the first big thing, right? Making sure that you can start and making sure that you know where you want to go with it. That's one of the biggest mistakes and one of the things that we've seen. Another big thing is trying to fix things that should just be replaced. Right. Very often you could have equipment, you have older equipment, you have things, and we've seen workarounds. We've seen many. I'm sure that everyone in the audience has seen many different workarounds that are put into place, which are great band-aid solutions. Right. You can put a band-aid around it. You'll say, okay, we'll do this. Whereas and I'll just give an example of a balance. Right. It could be a balance that's there where an upgrade would be an inexpensive upgrade, but could bring a full automation to that area in the shop floor. Whereas we see band-aid solutions to say, oh, we'll just, we'll take a paper, then we'll print it out, then we'll put it over here, then we'll track it here, we'll have a process and a procedure. When you look at the amount of effort that is required to live with workaround solutions versus just doing the upgrade. Upgrade is a one-time effort. It's very quick. It can be done. You can bring in vendors to do it. They're specialized on it. You can learn a lot with your team. You can upskill your team. But you have to have it in place. That's the second thing. The third big mistake that I've seen is using vendors without using the personnel. We had that in the poll earlier, right? We need to take the people with us. We need to move together. The team needs to be integrated and needs to be involved. I know a lot of walkthroughs I've gone through and a lot of inspections we've helped out clients with, where we said, hey, how are you going to do this? And what are some of the main points there? But we have to take the people. Ulrich, another poll came up. I think, which topic
Yeah,
are you most interested in the next webinar of Compliance
yeah.
Alliance? Just pick it up. If you guys want to hear from us in the future, pick one of the topics. And if you want to have a topic that's not on the list, click on other and throw it into the chat. Back to you, Ulrich.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the chance to run this poll. We got time for one last question. I agree, James. Great points. That's very much in line with my experience. Let's just take the chance for another second question. What do we think is the most trendy technology in view of quality and informatics solution? Maybe I will give a brief weigh in on that. I think that the advent of coding for everybody. So we got the no code and low code solutions. And even we can let, again, ChatGPT write a code for a command line script, which searches, for example, for some content for an audit trail review. So getting coding uncomplicated and therefore usable for more or less everybody, I think that is one big game changer, which will affect our industry and all the other industries as well. Going into line with the course I just talked about, that we want to get the quality unit. We need to get the quality unit somehow data literate. I think that's one of the main topics. James, do you want to add anything on that?
Not to that. I do see there's a couple of questions that came in that we might not be able to answer fully here. One of them was, can we get a training certificate? I would say reach out to us afterwards. We'll see what we can help out with. Another point was, can we get the presentation? As we said, we are recording the session. We're going to also put it on our page. You can see it there on the webinar page. And also, if you'd like to know more details, please do reach out. And lastly, we got a question in about what are some good KPIs from Stefania about how do you get data integrity KPIs in? Ulrich, what's your favorite place to find KPIs when we look at data integrity?
We got one place in the ISPE guideline guide on data integrity and records. You can reach out to me. I can give you a link to that. I don't have it here now, but there we have a KPI section. It goes with different topics from 1 to 5. In my personal experience, I would shorten it a bit because it's maybe very heavy, but it's a really good start point. And it asks questions from all the different dimensions like quality culture, but also very concrete questions like implementation status of new devices of data centralization, or over to audit trail. How far is audit trail review implemented, and you can then manage your KPIs like X amount of systems we have an audit trail review strategy implemented. This is in particular important if you have a data integrity program and you want to follow up on progress with that. But this is the best source to my knowledge. If anybody has any questions around that, feel free to reach out anytime.
We're at time. That's the buzzer right there.
The bell.
That's the bell. We're at time. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for your inputs. As we said, reach out to us. Feel free to reach out. Those unanswered questions about, like I said, a participation certificate or slides or things like that, reach out. We'll gladly share the links. We'll tell your friends, tell your family. We love to have the full house. This event sold out in a matter of weeks. We're thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you for joining the Compliance Alliance. Ulrich, closing words?
Yeah, I can only agree. Thank you very much for being here today with us, and I'm looking forward to the next session, following your advice in the latest poll. See you. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye bye.